Imagine having a personalized blueprint that guides you toward a life of alignment, clarity, and fulfillment. Well, the good news, it exists. Today, we're going to be talking with Jen Mallinger about human design. If you've never heard of it, then this is the perfect episode for you because Jen is going to help break it down into really understandable ways and show you how it can help you develop a deeper connection with your body's intuition. She provides practical tips and strategies, as well as just a nice general overview to what can sometimes be a little bit of an overwhelming system if you're looking at it without any type of guidance. I have personally worked with human design and worked with Jen and have found it to be something that is so incredibly beneficial of healing and self-growth. And I hope you absolutely fall in love with it as well. Jen is a human design guide for anyone who wants a more joyful life without having to spend a bunch of time trying to figure it out or what's wrong or how to fix it. She has a passion for empowering women to be their most authentic selves. Through human design, she helps them discover their own unique patterns of energy and brings more clarity and inspiration to their life. Jen has supported numerous women using intuitive guidance. She helps create aligned action plans and helps women move powerfully into the direction of their most authentic reality in any area of life. She offers programs for those just beginning their journey into human design and also for those who may have the foundation but want to go deeper into their design. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Unweaving Chronic Pain podcast. I am your host, Dr. Andrea Moore, founder of the Whole Self Integration Method, and I am here to lead you from a life that is shrinking due to chronic pain, whether that is physical or emotional pain, to one that is growing and expanding, one that you can continue to experience a fulfilled, satisfying life that aligns with you. And if you don't even know what that looks like for you, then don't worry. That is part of the journey as well. If you want to learn more about how to get started, go ahead and book an energy up-level call today. Now let's get into this episode. Welcome, welcome, Jen. I am so excited to have you on here today.
Hi, yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
So why don't you tell people a little bit about who you are, and let's just go right into how did you get into human design?
Okay, yeah, I'm Jen Mallinger. I am a human design guide, an energy intuitive, and I'm into astrology as well, but that's not quite as much of my thing as human design. As soon as I discovered human design, I just happened upon it in a podcast, actually, and I was so intrigued. It's all about how your energy is best functions in the world and how to kind of understand how your energy might be different from what culture sort of pushes on us. There's a lot of listening into your inner self, your body's wisdom versus your logical mind or what you've, been taught. So that really just turned me on. And I was like, I need to know more about this. So most people will say that when you first discover human design, you just go down this rabbit hole and you're just looking everywhere because it's so layered. When you see your chart for the first time, there's so much going on the chart and the words. The person who first sort of channeled human design, his name is Ra Uru, and it was in the 1980s, actually, not that long ago. Mm-hmm. And he was in Ibiza, Spain, walking down the street, and he heard a voice say, "Are you ready to get to work?" And apparently he said yes, because then for 8 days and nights is what they say, he just channeled all of this information. And it's a combination of things that we've heard of. It's a combination of astrology and the chakra system, the Chinese I Ching, the Kabbalah tree of life, genetics. All these different things are kind of layered in together to create this picture, this sort of blueprint of your design, your energetic design, your gifts, your purpose, the strongest intuitive sort of center of your body where your truth is going to be most easily heard. And it's just very, yeah, there's a lot of layers. There's a lot to it. So when you first discover it, I spent maybe 4 years. I told a girlfriend about it and she was like, what is this? And we both just went down the rabbit hole together, and we would get together every week and just like try to figure it out. And I think now there's been a bit of, I don't know, like a tipping point or something where when I talk to people, when I give readings, people seem to pick it up pretty quickly, or the first parts. Like we always say to dive into your type, strategy, and authority first. And just experiment with those. And so when I talk to people, they seem to get that part. But I remember for me, I was just like, what is all of this stuff? And trying to understand it all at once. So yeah.
Yeah. And for anyone listening who is like, what the heck is human design? Like, what is she even talking about? And I'll say, I did not know the story of how human design was developed until like quite a bit after I had dove into it. And while I like love woo-woo and spiritual, I'm also like really skeptical and like really I don't know, I can't think of the right word.
Yeah, it's out there. I mean, when you hear the origin story, it's very much out there. And so
I just want to say, for anyone who heard that origin story, like I'm glad I didn't hear the origin story right off the bat, because I might not have given it a chance. But because I didn't hear the origin story, and I just I can't even honestly remember exactly how I came across it or why at this point. Actually, no, I do remember. Anyway, that's not like anything worth sharing, no. The way it was presented to me was like a very practical way, I would say. And I was someone who like I always like liked reading like my, horoscope or something, but I never felt like it resonated that much. And like, I like love taking like the Enneagram and whatever, Myers-Briggs, but I felt like I always had a lot of trouble answering the questions for those. And then I'd get it and I'd be like, I don't know, but I could be this or this or this. And then later I find out I'm Aquarius, so that's like part of it. Aquarius has like no stable type whatsoever, so that probably has something to do with why I'm like, nothing ever resonates. But when I like got my human design, it was one of like the most validating things that I had ever read about myself. And it was the first time that I kind of like delved into any system where I was like, holy shit, there's something here. Like, whoa, there was parts like it was uncomfortable, but like it was like, oh, this is me. And there was, anyway, so I just want to be like, I think you can go super woo-woo and spiritual with this, but human design can be like so practical.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is exactly what that's why we say, anybody who's a reader for human design, we say that it's an experiment. Yes. So, ultimately, whether you like the woo-woo part or are like, what are you talking about? It doesn't really matter if you want to just experiment with it. It's very practical, like you said. It gives you these like ways to experiment with, understanding what is an aligned yes for you or what is a no for you, how to take those steps forward. It helps you understand how your body needs rest, how much rest, and other things where it's kind of like if you start to experiment with the way that your design like sort of attracts opportunities and options for you, that starts to sound a little woo-woo again. But again, it's all an experiment. It's just something to see if it has positive impact on your life, if you are interested in it.
Yeah. Well, let's go into like, if someone has absolutely no idea what human design is, like the types and all that is probably like, what are you talking about? So let's get like super granular of like, what are the different types that you could be in human design?
Yeah. Well, that's where we kind of start with learning. There's 5 types. That's the first thing. And so some of them are more rare than other ones. The first ones I always mention are the generators and the manifesting generators. That's like they say like around 70% of the population between the two of those. A generator type is someone who has, like, if you look at the chart and look at the different chakras, they have sacral energy. They have this like gut knowing. So if you've ever heard someone say like, oh, listen to your gut, that person probably was a generator type because their gut speaks to them very easily of like whether something is like right for them, whether they have energy for something. So generator types, they're really meant to kind of move sort of slowly through the world, but build things and master things. And um, we talk about aura. This is an aura type, really. And generators are they have the most open and receptive, warm, magnetic type of aura. So if you're a generator, lots of people are going to be asking you to do things for them. They're going to be really like thinking, oh, this person's so reliable. They have all this energy and they're such a warm, inviting person. And I'm going to ask them to do this. So one of the first things for a generator to look at in this experiment is, am I saying yes to a lot of different things that I maybe don't feel lit up about, don't feel like I really have the energy for, but I know that I could do it and I want to be, helpful to people. So that's part of that experiment at the beginning for generator types is like knowing that when you have a really positive response to something and you want to be involved in something, when that is going on, you're actually generating more good energy for the world. So it's kind of can be very liberating to hear as a generator that you're really meant to be more selfish than you probably ever thought you were, because when you're focused on what's, right for you, you're generating that more good energy and you're putting that out into the world. So that is, the conditioning is really like thinking that you should be doing things for people and you should be doing what you could easily do for people, but turning that into like, what do I really want to do? Well, it's very transformative.
Yeah, I'm a generator.
Yeah, so am I. Yeah.
The saying no is really hard. When you know you can do it.
It is hard. But if you start to do that and you make that space in your life, another thing about generators is you're really meant to stay in the present as much as possible. And generators often want to plan and kind of know where things are going. But if you stay in the present and don't make too many plans or commitments, then when you're saying no to some things, you're kind of creating some space in your life. And then you want to practice or experiment with just being really present and looking around you and being like, all right, what do I really want to do in this moment? Like, what do I feel inside I have energy for? That's the second thing after type is strategy, and the two go together. So we talk about that type and strategy together, and generator strategy is to respond. So because you're so magnetic and sort of attracting things into your world, you always want to be responding and checking your physical body's response to those things to see whether you actually have energy for it or you just think, maybe mentally that you should be doing this or doing that. So yeah, that's the generator. And the second type that's also a generator type is a manifesting generator. And, so some of the words in human design are not like really exact. So manifesting generator doesn't just mean that they make, they manifest more easily. It's really more about the impact that manifesting generators can have. They're a generator type, but they're also able to like sort of move really quickly once they get involved in something. They're kind of able to like bounce around and like they have lots of different interests usually, and they can sort of weave them all together. There's just like a buzzy bee kind of energy, they say, around manifesting generators. And I've started to really be able to recognize that. I know when I'm meeting a manifesting generator, they usually say they have ADHD, which, that's like that energy of really having a focus that's split and moving around a lot.
So funny because like I'm a generator, but my husband's a manifesting generator. But I feel like I feel like when you describe that, I'm like, I should be the manifesting generator because he's like so focused and so like, but I can see the like the rapidness to it. Like he decided he wanted to like, run for a political office, and it's like he just like went in head first and just like bam, like made it happen and like has been going and stuff like that. I'm like the all over the place ADHD.
Yeah, well, so that's definitely, that's like one of the things they'll say. Like he decided that that was right for him
Mhm.
and he could just skip right to doing it. He
Totally.
didn't have to
It's
spend
insane.
years, Yeah, right.
It's so him. And I'm like, it's not fair.
Yeah, yep. So those are the two generator types. They're both have this strategy of responding. Maybe for your husband, maybe he just saw something about somebody who had run for office or someone in office and he just like probably just lit up and
That's so funny. It's exactly is that no one was running in the seat. Like the seat was uncontested. And he's like, this is ridiculous. Why is the seat uncontested? I need to run. And he's just like, okay.
There you go. Yeah,
oh my
exactly.
Gosh, that's so funny. Yeah.
Responding
in
to
his
something.
human design, Jen, sorry, and then I'll let you finish, but
no, go ahead.
Literally, like he got so bought in because it's like, I was like, let's see what your human design is. His like what is it, the incarnation cross? Literally like, you're meant to do something in community, probably in politics. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, this is ridiculous. Like,
that's so cool.
It's insane. And I was like, why is this so specific? Because mine's so like vague. Like my like what I meant to do is like this really vague one. And his was like, you were meant to like work in politics. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that, like we kind of get into that later when you're diving into your human design is your incarnation cross, which is a way of describing your purpose. But the fun thing about that is that all you need to know about it is that if you do experiment with your type and strategy and authority and just like kind of go with them and listen to your body, you end up on this path that takes you straight to your purpose. And you don't have to stress about it or like, spend all this time thinking about what is my purpose. You just kind of end up there. That's one of the really amazing things about playing with human design, I think.
Yeah. Can I say one thing about that before you go to the other types is that I think one of the most challenging things for so many people listening who may have chronic pain, may have a lot of like anxiety, things like that, is that we have a really hard time listening to our body because it's like we don't trust it.
Yeah.
And human design requires you to listen to your body.
Yeah, it's true.
And that has been something where it's like I do notice it between him and I. He's like, he just like does it. Like he doesn't know he's doing, like he just doesn't have to think about it. He just like doesn't have like the hang-ups. He's just so like, oh well, this just like is what made sense. And like, yeah, this felt like a yeah. Okay, but he has like no consciousness where I'm like, I've spent my entire life trying to build this connection with my body so I can listen to it. And I needed to do that because I didn't have a connection with my body. I did have a connection with my body. I find most people actually do have a connection with their body. They just override it with so much stuff that they don't realize what their true connection is. But so I just want to say to anyone listening, like part of, I think, the human design experiment is giving yourself the space to like experiment with actually trying to listen to your body and being like, is this my body speaking? What happens if I listen to this voice? And what happens if I listen to this? And, that's something that I work with people a lot of, like how to actually gain access to your wisdom so you can listen, because that's really challenging. And so I just want to put that out there because I know it used to give me like a lot of anxiety to hear people be like, well, you just need to listen to your body. But I'm like, but I don't know what it's saying.
Oh, absolutely. I relate to that so much. And just a note on your incarnation cross, your life purpose is all about learning to listen to your intuition. That's literally it. So you obviously that has been your journey. But I totally know what you mean. And I think one of the things that is so like calming and comforting about human design is the idea that we have an inner authority. And it's maybe just one specific part of our body that we need to, experiment with listening to. So for you, for example, I know your authority is, if you don't mind me saying, it's emotional. No. Yeah. You have an emotional authority. And that is one of the trickier ones because people with an emotional authority, we really need to, there's 7 authorities we could get. I don't know if we'll have time to get into all those, but I want to talk about emotional. You really need to, kind of go down that road of feeling those sensations in your body and letting your emotions process and pass through and then getting to clarity. And then you'll know whether something is a yes or no for you, whether it'll make you happy or not. But you kind of have to ride the high and the low of that. But there are 6 other authorities that someone could have. And maybe your husband has sacral or splenic. And
He's
each of those.
Emotional too.
Is he really?
He is.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I could.
Okay.
You can
Well,
keep talking about it. Yeah.
yeah. So there's people with that are generators. I don't want to get too complicated here, but
I know. Sorry.
we all have the gut. We all have the sacral. If you're a generator or a manifesting generator, you do have a gut response. So it's possible that a lot of the decisions in his life are not, the emotions aren't getting engaged. Sometimes it's just, if it's something is a more complicated decision, then the emotions get engaged. If you are a generator type, listening to your gut can be, it can work in a lot of decisions. But yeah, there's also like splenic, where you need to just like listen for that intuition, that intuitive hit. And that isn't so much about being in touch with different feelings in your body as much as it is just kind of being willing to sit and be aware. One of them is called self-projected, and that's when you speak. You're going to sort of understand your own yes or no based on like what you say out loud. You'll hear it in your tone of voice. You'll hear it as you speak to someone who, you trust to not be giving you advice at that time. So it can be very liberating for someone who may have had, some trust issues with their body, to find out like, oh, well, I have sacral authority. So if I just kind of practice listening, practice this with like generators, we say that it can be great to practice learning what your yes or your no is when you're maybe deciding what to wear in the morning, right? Like looking in your closet and being like, oh, like I kind of feel like I'm moving towards this one shirt, or I'm feeling like kind of excited about wearing this one thing. And that can be a fun way to practice with that. But yeah, the different types have, it can be kind of liberating, I think.
I think so too. And I think for people who have trouble connecting with their body, I think human design is such a great tool to use to help you connect, so you're not like a free-for-all trial and error. It like gives you like some constraints around it, as long as we're not throwing anything out or getting too rigid about anything. But like I do think for me, once I learned I was the emotional one and I needed to like ride the highs and the lows, it's like I could see that in my process. I still sometimes struggle with it in some areas, but like overall, I'm like, okay, yeah, that is me. And I felt like I had heard so much of that, like follow your gut, just trust the immediate instinct type thing. Whereas it's like, I need the time. And I think a lot of them need like the space and the time to make a decision. And so it was like, oh, it's okay that I don't immediately know. Like that's not anything that has gone wrong. So it's like, for somebody who is listening, one, you can go like literally just type in like free human design chart, and like you can pull up your chart and then it'll like give it to you, and then you can Google whatever your authority is for more information about how it works, because we're obviously not covering everything in depth, because then we would be here for, I don't know, 105 hours, probably more. So but you can get an idea of that, and you can see if you've been trying to, maybe you've like learned about listening to your body from another type or authority who's kind of been pushing what worked for them onto you. And it can be so liberating. You're like, oh my God, I just don't function like that. That's not how my body operates.
Absolutely. That's so true, especially about that emotional authority, for sure. Because one of the things you want to practice doing is saying, oh, can I sleep on that? That sounds wonderful. Can I have a couple days to think about that? You're really wanting to slow that down so you can go through that whole wave. So that's so true. Yeah. Some of them you're not supposed to know right in the moment. So
yeah, I notice I have a tendency to, in the moment, I get like feed off someone else's energy. So if they're excited about something, I'll get really excited, like, yeah, I'm totally. And then I like the next thing, I'm like, why the fuck did I agree to that? Like, yeah, God damn it. And so it's like, I've been better about being like, just because I'm excited now and want to say yes now doesn't mean this is a yes. Like that has been a big, big learning lesson for me, of like for like bigger things, right? This is like not because Jen had to help me with this because I'm like, but what about when I need to order at a restaurant? Like, how am I supposed to sleep on this? And Jen's like, I don't need to do it for little decisions, Andrea. I was like, thank you.
Use your gut for that.
Yes. But it's like for these bigger things or agreeing to something of just like giving it some space, because I am way more likely to like literally feel like it's a full body yes, and then like it's not a full body yes the next day at all, and then I'm like,
absolutely. I always use the example for emotional authorities of like, sometimes like in the past, I remember somebody would invite me maybe on a trip or something, or be like, hey, do you want to go to Costa Rica or something? And I would be like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course. And then the next day I would be like, oh no, no, I don't want to do that. I can't afford that. Or, whatever comes into your mind. So you can really like start to understand what your own wave is. But I have that same problem, getting really excited because someone else maybe is, and then needing to get all the way back to neutral, because you don't want to just say no either, because you've been conditioned to think you shouldn't spend the money or you shouldn't do things. You want to get back to neutral so that you can kind of see like, will this make me happy? Actually, does this like bring a smile to my face? So yeah, the emotional one is a fun one. But something else I wanted to say about generator types is something called the not self, which basically it's just like what I like to think of as your red flag emotion. So a lot of emotions, they're mind made, like we're kind of creating them with our thoughts. And so for generator types, frustration, it often means, if you're feeling frustrated, it often means that you're kind of trying to figure something out, or you're trying to you're like tensing up and trying to get something figured out or fixed all on your own with your mind. And if you're a generator type, you have this ability to attract solutions from the outside world. So that frustration is this red flag, and it's telling you to like, okay, wait a minute, maybe just like let go of this thinking, kind of like let it unwind and release and open up again, and like untense yourself and open up and see what comes to you that might help you answer that question or that solve that problem from the outside world. So I think that can be really an amazing thing about human design, is it shows you some areas where you may be tensing up on a regular basis, and what that tension can look like for you, and how to release that and let sort of, the universe or whatever you want to call it, like help you, support you in your daily life.
Yes. And this was something that Jen and I worked on, or Jen told me about and worked with me about, because this was such like a mind-blowing thing, because a lot, like, to me, it's so helpful to dive into emotion, understand what's underneath. And, if we're like trying to rewire the nervous system or work with trauma patterns. So I was trying to apply that to like things that I shouldn't have been applying that to, such as when I would be in frustration about something. I'm like, why am I frustrated? Let me figure this out. And Jen's like, stop trying to figure it out. Just step away from what you're doing. She's like, just stop and step away and go do something else. And I'm like, oh, I don't have to figure it out. And like, that's been so liberating too, because it's just like this is a sign that something is off. I don't even know what yet. And sometimes it's just a matter of stepping away and coming back to it. Like, it's just more that I needed to go take a walk or whatever it might be. And yeah, when I get into that frustration, I mean, I don't always remember, but I'm better about it. To be like, okay, I like how you call it that red flag emotion. And each type has their different variation of that. But it's like, to not try to figure it out when you're in that saves so much energy and time.
Yeah. I mean, as a generator myself, I think frustration is the one that I can picture as being like the biggest issue in my life over all these years. And so, yeah, I agree. Some emotions, we don't want to spiritually bypass, we don't want to not feel things. But frustration is really, for us at least, or I don't know, maybe for all the types, frustration it's in your mind, usually, it's up there. And so letting that go, releasing that tension, it opens you back up again. And then you get the answers a lot more easily. I think.
Totally. It's almost like you're sticking your hand in like a pot of boiling water. It's like, you don't sit there and be like, let me keep feeling this and figure out what's going on, right? It's like, no, that's time to take your hand out.
Oh, that's very good analogy.
Yeah. It's like, there are certain things where it's like, ooh, what's here? And let's explore and get curious and lean in. And that's so much what like I'm working with people about, is building their capacity to lean into discomfort, but like purposeful discomfort. right?
Yeah.
We don't lean into suffering or pain or frustration in this case just for the sake of leaning into something uncomfortable. It's like we want to have the intention around it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing for generators, the sort of the opposite, the green flag, I guess, of a generator type, is the feeling of satisfaction. So that's really what you're going for in this experiment, is that you want to feel satisfied with the way that you used your energy at the end of the day. You want to use it all up and feel really satisfied. And also some joy. You know, generators are really meant to have a lot of pleasure in our lives, feel joy. And sometimes you can feel like that's a long way away. But I can attest that if you start this experiment and you start listening more to your inner wisdom, you do go in that direction. And there is more of that in your life. It's pretty magical.
absolutely. Yeah.
I think. All right, so we've got
the other types. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. We've really dug into
Yes,
our type. So the next one I talked about is projectors. So projectors, I think it's about, they say like maybe 20% of the population. I think that's right. And projectors are a newer type in the world, and they're really meant to be guides for humanity. It can feel tricky to them because they have often like their guidance, their advice, their insights about things that can be fixed and made more efficient in the world, which is really what their brain is doing all the time. They're not always met with openness from other people. So as a projector, you really want to follow your strategy, which is to wait for the invitation to share. So that is something really, I think, can be a huge experiment and a great change in a projector's life, is once you start like kind of looking around and being aware of whether or not the person or the institution or whatever it is that you can see that you're like fascinated by and you're absorbed by, and you're kind of seeing how it can be fixed or changed or guided, seeing if it's open, the energy's open, or even if you're being directly asked to do that. It just changes everything, because the signature feeling for a projector is to feel successful in helping someone, in guiding, in sort of, you know, making things more efficient. So that success comes when you are working with open energy from other people. And the red flag emotion for a projector is bitterness. So projectors that don't necessarily look for this invitation can often feel like, I have these insights, I need to help this person, or I can see how it's so easy for me to see how this can be better, this can be fixed, and they just want to give it, especially within families, within, you know, even workplaces, just wanting to share that and getting, maybe not getting appreciation in return. And that can bring a feeling of bitterness, like, I have all this to give and nobody wants it. And so learning that strategy of like waiting to be invited to share, waiting to feel like someone has recognized you. Recognition is a big theme for projectors. Feeling like someone has recognized what you have to offer and your expertise. And once you've been recognized, and you can give that to yourself as well. That's something to do as a projector. If you're feeling bitter or not getting the invitations, just recognizing yourself can be really healing. Yeah. So
and for that wait for the invitation, can you give some examples of like what an invitation could look like? Because I feel like I took that so literally. Yeah. And it's not quite as literal, I think, as it sounds.
It can be both, right? Yeah. So the literal invitation is, you know, for example, if you're in business, you're a coach or something, and you kind of want to be waiting for someone else to invite you, like on a podcast or something, like, hey, do you want to come and share your wisdom with my group or something? That's the literal invitation. That's obvious. But I think that once you start to pay attention, it's not too difficult to recognize an energetic invitation. And that can be like, you can start to notice it with friends, for example. Like if you think about who in your friend group or your family always wants to hear what you think, is always maybe asking you like, how would you do this? that is an energetic invitation. And you just then know that that person sees you and recognizes you as someone who can help or who has these insights. Yeah. Does that help make more sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And I think I know for me, when as a coach, but I was like, well, what if like in every session, how do I know? And I don't know if it was you. It's like, no, if they've like signed up to work with you, then like,
yes,
that's already the invitation.
Exactly.
Like, it's not in every moment. Okay.
Yeah. It takes
I just like got
while.
really, yeah. I don't know why.
Yeah. It can take a little while to kind of let go of the total literal and understand more. But I think you can, as if you're a projector, you know what it feels like when someone is not inviting you, because you feel that sort of bitterness of like, what is happening? Like they're not listening to me at all, or I have all these insights and they don't care, so you can recognize the difference if you start to do that contrast. I think. Yeah.
No, that's such a great way to put it, of just like thinking on past times where you have inserted your advice. That was probably fantastic advice. And it has not been well received.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't have any idea what that's like, because I never insert my opinions anywhere where I shouldn't pay enough. But yeah, what's the difference, I guess, because it's like, so projectors waiting for the invitation, but generators waiting to respond.
Yeah. So waiting for the invitation is really like in that relationship, making sure that the energy is open to you. Waiting to respond is the whole world, everything external to you, what's coming into your world, what is around you, and how is your physical energy responding to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Like I need to
with the yes or the no
too for the
anyways. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Another thing people ask about projectors is like, what are you supposed to do when you're waiting for the invitation? Right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things they say is to focus on what is fascinating to you. Sort of like creating something where you're sort of sharing with the world in some way. Maybe it's social media or maybe, whatever, but just whatever you're most fascinated with and you're learning about and where your insights are focused, sharing that. And then people who need that and who are going to recognize you will see you and find you. And then they're inviting you.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Then we have reflectors.
So that's, So then we have manifestors.
Oh yeah.
Manifestors are, I think, like 9% or so of the population, they say. Manifestors they're a little different. The last two are a little different, being rarer. Manifestors have this really impactful, this aura that's meant to sort of disrupt the status quo. So while the other types are, it's more in relation to what's coming from the outside world or from people. For manifestors, they're really downloading. They're having creative surges and downloading information, and they're kind of like, it's an internal process of what they want to do is kind of coming through them. And so they're really just meant to have a major impact on the world. And they usually have big energy surges followed by an extremely need to rest. And I didn't mention about projectors. That's one of the most, I think, validating things for projectors to learn too, is that you don't have that sacral energy generating. And so projectors do often feel that they need a lot more rest. They like to take naps. They might want to work in their pajamas. That's a big thing for projectors.
Nice.
And manifestors, it's kind of this like all or nothing kind of thing. Like they have these huge surges and they want to put something out in the world, and then they just need to crash.
Yep.
Yeah. So the strategy for manifestors is to inform. And it's a little tricky. So it's happening kind of like after they get these surges or these downloads or these like creative ideas. What can happen is that if they don't inform people who might be affected by what they're going to do, or who could theoretically help them or support them, if they don't speak about it and inform them, then they can meet with resistance from others. So this strategy of letting people know, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm all about, this is what I want to accomplish, it sort of like clears the path so that there's less resistance. And that can be really hard for it can be liberating to learn that as a manifester, that like, oh, maybe this will help me with the resistance that I felt. But a lot of the time, manifestors have maybe had conflict in relationships, and because they just want to do their own thing and people get like upset about it. And so they kind of shut down and they stop wanting to have those conversations. But they're really important because those conversations clear the path for them to do what they want to do, the way they want to do it. Their red flag emotion is anger. And anger comes when they are feeling resistance from other people for what they want to do. So that is another reason why it's so important to inform and let people know what you're up to, because then you're clearing the path, and the signature emotion, the sign that you're on the right track, the green flag for manifestors, is peace. Feeling peace.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a smaller part of the population, but they have big energy. And I think often manifestors feel like they've kind of their whole life been sort of told to be smaller and have smaller energy and fit into boxes and fit into 9-to-5 culture or this or that. And it just does not work for them. They are really meant to have this impactful, big energy. And people want to follow them. Like, I think Jennifer Aniston and Donald Trump, not to bring up his name. Oh my gosh, you can edit that out if you want. But both of those people are manifestors. So it just kind of shows a little bit how they just have this vibe, this energy where for some reason, like, certain people want to follow them, want to just see what they're doing and be behind them no matter what they do.
Yeah, that's so fascinating.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Okay, and so then the last type of the 5 is the reflector. And a reflector it's 1% of population. There's only a few. I've only met a couple. Reflectors are, Sandra Bullock is one. I always point that out. Yeah. They're just the most empathetic people. They have all of their chakra centers in their chart are all open. So they're just like kind of being impacted by other people's energy. They're taking it all in. They are meant to just kind of like become aware of the energy coming from the outside and whether that is healthy for them or not, whether the environments they're in feel healthy, and releasing what isn't theirs. I was like taking the time to let that go. Because they're so wise and they just have so much understanding of other people because of all of that empathy, that energy that they can see. For reflectors, they really have to take a long time to make a decision because they're very fluid and their moods can change from day to day. Their moods can change based on the moon, on what's going on around them, on other people's energy. So for reflectors, they always have the same authority. They always have this lunar authority. And it's important to take as much time as you can. I mean, up to, a month or more to make a decision, because you're going to feel differently from day to day. And what you want to do is get to the point where a certain decision is kind of consistently feeling good, consistently feeling right for you throughout these different changes in your mood and your energy and all of that. For reflectors, their red flag emotion is disappointment. And I think when you're taking in all of humanity and everything that's going on, you're going to feel a lot of disappointment. And that is just such a huge thing to release and to let go of, because what you're meant to feel as a reflector is surprised and delighted by the universe. So being able to sort of forgive and release that disappointment opens you up again. Again, it's like this tension of your red flag emotion. And if you're letting that go, it opens you up to allow in delight and allow in surprise. So, yeah, it's tricky for reflectors. And there's some people, about the reflectors. Yeah. There's some people that only have a couple of centers that are defined. That's a whole other part of it. And they can feel a lot like a reflector. There can be a lot, like some projectors can have very few centers, and so they're going to feel more empathetic and have some more of those tendencies. So yeah.
Yeah. And so with the open centers, is that like that's where you're taking in information from the outside?
Yeah.
Okay.
If your centers, if you look at your chart and you see some of the centers are white, then those are places where, yes, where you're sort of taking in energy from others and really needing to like make sure that you don't think it's your own energy, right?
Yeah.
Letting that go. If you have a center that's colored in, and it doesn't matter the color, which everyone always thinks is so weird, it is really weird. But if you have a center that's colored in, then that means that you are impacting the world with your energy.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And obviously there's like profiles and all these things, which we're not going to have time to get into.
Yeah.
But you can go look yours up.
Yes.
Because you can, I mean, there's so many things that I still do not know about it. But I just want to, I have a question for you. Maybe it's a random question, but I feel like
I'm excited.
As you were talking about it. So like, not to bring back Donald Trump. Okay. But it's like, clearly he's like operating in this world, doing his thing, whatever. We're not going to talk about that, but it's like, whatever. But then I feel like you have different types that are like, he's not in the self-help space is what I want to get at, right? It's like I don't know what Tony Robbins is, for example, or like Mel Robbins, or not to bring in the Robbins, but it's like where you have these people who are like, here's like me, it's like I'm helping people to work with their body. And I've started for most of my one-on-one clients pulling their human design just to get an idea of their type. But I always tell them, I'm like, I'm not an expert. Like, this is just so I can get a general sense, because I do find it to be helpful. And then most people start deep diving on their own and stuff. Yeah. But like, it's like when I'm speaking to a group of people, right? It's like when I am sharing something that has worked really well for me, for instance, and my clients, I think the one thing the one downside of human design is it made me really like, but what if someone's a reflector and then they're taking this and that doesn't work for them and now they're trying to use something, and because I have this, my like one theme of my life is like complete fear of causing harm. Okay, so like
yes,
it like lights
so
up this piece of like, oh my goodness, what if I'm suggesting something that doesn't work, right? Or like, I feel like you'll hear that, right? It's like that's where I kind of adopted this idea of like, oh, I should be able to just like listen to my gut, because I think there's some pretty prominent people that speak about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's like, how do we manage that? Like,
that's a really good question.
From other types, like, where do we just shut someone else's advice? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think that's a really great question. And I think that human design is here in this time as part of, there's something we call the new paradigm and it has a lot to do with astrology and how we're moving into this Aquarius time, right? And Aquarius is about knocking down the hierarchies, and people are equal and have, we don't need to look to outer authorities, all of that. So I feel like your question, it's like, human design is here to show us more of how people are different and how people's energy works differently, and help us to not be making blanket statements about energy in the first place. So I think it's very smart to, if you have doing a talk for a huge group of people, run it past human design, like, talk to a human design expert, or just kind of think about it in relation to energy, and maybe you open up more to what you're saying. Like, I don't know if you have maybe an example of like something that you've kind of said, hey, this works for me, but
I mean, I feel like I always bring in nuance. My issue is bringing way too much nuance, because then I get like, oh my God, but this person can do this, right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, ultimately, my underlying message is how to listen to your own body. So
exactly. And I think that's what human design is helping the coaching world even more to remember, that it's all about your, like, like we both learned from teachers that are like, your body compass is in your gut. right?
Mm-hmm.
But now we know, well, maybe that person has a sacral authority and maybe somebody else is going to hear it in their voice. So I think it's just a new tool that is helping us see even more variety and even more just really valid and liberating ways that people operate.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah. It's so funny because I get like so worked up over stuff because I'm actually trying to do more public speaking. And so this is like so on top of mind right now.
Yeah.
But when I like actually sit there and like look at my message or what I'm going to say, and I'm like, I'm totally fine. Like, I don't know why right? It's
No,
just
I
so
do that too
funny.
because I think it's so, we are definitely like, I mean, I think that there's, older souls, they say, are like really, we're so compassionate. We don't want to do harm, like you said. And so I think that's one of the hugest things that anyone in this sort of healing and coaching spaces, we get hung up on that. Like we don't want to say the wrong thing and it can stop us from sharing any message. So, but I know you're right that like when you really think about what you're sharing, there is room for everyone and you are not telling people what to do. You're telling them to come back to their inner self.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to call a human design authority their inner authority, because really that's what it is. It's like not giving your authority away to the external world, to any person who is acting like an authority, but coming back to yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like this almost chicken or egg thing, right? Where it's like when you have this connection with your body, and like I always talk about like running things through your own body. Like you have to take something and just like run it through your own system, like whatever that means for you. But it's when you don't know how to yet do that and you are trying to figure out who to learn that from or how to learn that, it's really challenging to have that discernment because you don't yet trust your own discernment. And I really think that when people are able to just even notice where they're handing off their power to someone, and just by starting with that awareness of like, oh, I'm just like full on trusting what this person says, that they really do notice a clenching in their system or a tightening or whatever it might be for them, however it presents. And I'll say though, I've also had it, like I'm working with a coach right now who it's like, we have developed so much trust and rapport, and we're she's trialing out like a new modality that she's learning on me, right? And it's really like counterintuitive. But it's like I can see where like I'm not going to go into what it is, but it's like we had this conversation or she was telling me to do something yesterday that it was like, well, like had it not been her, I would have been like, oh, hell no. Like, what are you talking about? I don't trust this. Like I could feel my whole body like, but I trusted her and I had built up like my body already trust her. And it's like, it actually went really well then. And it was like, we came out the other side and I was like, oh. So there's just so much nuance to all of this. Is really where I'm just adding more confusion to it. This is what I do. But like goes back to where I want to loop it back to is the experimentation piece.
Yes. Exactly.
Because taking what I did yesterday with the coach, it's like I was just like worst case, I end up being probably really uncomfortable in my body for a little bit, and I'm really tired, right? Like we were doing like an energetic thing. I was like, it's pretty hard to like create any long-lasting harm for something like that. So I think it's just when you have that discernment of like, what if I just play with this? What if I just play with ordering off the menu by completely trusting my gut? Worst case, I don't like my meal. Worst case, I don't like my outfit, right? Like, of playing with these things and just letting yourself. This is my 3 talking, Jen, of my throw spaghetti at the wall and just try things.
Yeah.
It's like letting it be an experiment and not needing to get it right away.
Because how often does your mind get it right? Right? Like if we were all just walking around with our minds being just absolute perfect decision makers, then we wouldn't even be interested in trying anything else, right? Like, but we've been told forever that, the logical mind and the brain is like, pros and cons list. These are the only ways to make decisions. So I just think it's exciting and fun to try another experiment, try something else, and like look at what your human design says about, what about you? Like maybe your intuition is meant to be a stronger source of truth for you. I think it's just a fun experiment. And really, once you do it for a while, you start to see your life kind of feeling like more ease, more flow, like more opportunities coming in. That's where the magic is. Once you try this experiment, you feel less frustrated, less bitter, less angry, less disappointed. Like,
Totally.
okay, I'm going to keep trying this out, right? I think it's just a fun experiment that leads in really good directions. So
I agree. I mean, that's been my experience, and it's like I barely deep dived into it, but it's like been so helpful so far. Okay, I have another question for you. Yeah. I'll just call it my sister out. And I've had one other person say this too, of like, see their human design and be like, no, like, this is not me. Like, this feels so wrong in every way. And I will say, I was very surprised by her human design. I expected her to be a hermit. She was not. But like, there is an element of like, oh yeah, that's like not her. And I will say, I don't think she listens to this podcast, so she won't hear me say this. I'm super curious. She's like not really open to this. Of like, she also has a lot of frustration and stress and some chronic health issues. I'm like, what if she's like just living so not by her design at all, that her actual true design is just like unrecognizable to her?
Oh, I think that's definitely a stage for a lot of people. Like, unless she decides she wants to try that, she may never know. But I think, I mean, again, we're saying take it or leave it. If it works for you or doesn't. And also, I haven't yet met a person who didn't find some recognition in it unless they just really weren't interested or closed off to it, or were feeling it goes against maybe one of their gifts. Like, we won't get into this today, obviously, but there's something called channels and gates, which can call out specific gifts that you have. And one of them is logic and skepticism. So maybe she has that channel and she's really relying on it because maybe it helps her feel like she's, fitting in with what our culture values the most. This is just like one way of looking at it, possibly. And she doesn't want another perspective. She doesn't want to try something out because that has helped her feel like she belongs or it's working for her. There's just, I think, and it's fun too, like when I talk one-on-one with people who don't necessarily feel like their type and we dig in a little bit, then they can see it differently. Because if you haven't spent much time studying it, then you might only hear one word about your type and just be like, no. And then if you look at it in different ways, you can kind of see, oh, like maybe I should experiment with that. That makes sense.
Totally. And and you can Google a lot of stuff about human design.
There's you can stuff everywhere.
And like everyone kind of has their own spin or take on it. So I don't know, this is what I do. I'm not saying this is the right. Jen can probably speak to this. I'm like, if I read something and I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't like feel quite right, I'll just like read a couple other variations of it. Yeah. To one, maybe understand a little better or like whatever, just to be like, okay, what else is there? What else is someone else spit? And I will say, I mean, my biggest recommendation to anyone who's listening and is like, I want to dive in more, is like, oh my gosh, go get someone to get you a reading. Because when you go and pull your free chart, which you can, it is like the most meaningless thing you'll ever look at, because that is like my one gripe of human design is I feel like there's a like barrier to entry.
There is a little bit, yes.
And it's like, that is like the one, that's like my one thing with it, because it's so, I almost feel like it's like that person who speaks overly analytical and using big words just to like sound super smart. I kind of feel like, no offense to human design, like it's almost like that. It's like, haha, I'm talking. It's not though. Like once you go into it, I mean, whatever.
Well, Ra was a manifester, so Ra, who downloaded it, he just was here to disrupt and like shock people and throw these words out there, and so it's needed. It's needed to be softened and translated by people.
Yes, and like it's so helpful because it's so overwhelming to try to I don't even know how. I didn't try to understand that on my own. I initially had a reading, and then I worked with Jen, who is amazing, and I highly recommend, because I feel like she breaks things down so well and makes it very applicable to you, because ultimately that's what's most important.
That's where the fun experiment
yes.
is, and when you can figure out how to use your own, gifts and channels, and like, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I feel like it was very helpful working with you, Jen, in terms of like giving me like one little piece to focus on.
Yes, I
Otherwise you look
definitely,
at it, and
that's
it's like,
my incarnation cross. My purpose is literally to take like sort of futuristic ideas or like kind of insights and then make them really simple and easy to understand. So that's what I try to do in my readings, for sure.
You definitely do. I love that. That's so funny.
Thank you.
I know that was
Thank
your
you.
thing. But
Yeah.
so highly, highly recommend if this has been helpful to you, is like book a session with Jen or anyone else who resonates with you, but Jen's awesome. I mean, biased here. and just like go through it, even if it's just like just a session to just understand, because just from like one session, you're so much to kind of work with and start exploring, which is kind of another thing I really like about it, is like you can just take one tiny piece and go for like months with just that. It doesn't have to be this, okay, now I'm signing up for some big coaching program and I'm meeting every week. Like it could if you wanted to explore and stuff like that. But
they really we recommend starting with your type, strategy, and authority. And we didn't quite get to all the authorities today, but that helps you with your strategy. So those three things, I mean, the idea is to experiment with those for 6 months or a year even, and just start to feel how that is working in your life before you dive deeper. So yeah, you could definitely start in a very understandable place, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Any last things that you want people to know?
Gosh, any last things? I mean, I just come back to how transformative it's been for me, really, to recognize that I'm someone who doesn't need to be pushing so hard as a generator, and doesn't need to, like, the hustle culture we all talk about, like, that's just not my path. And that made me frustrated for so long, and to kind of realize, oh no, I'm actually meant to attract solutions, and I don't have to be pushing like that. So there's just been so much transformation in my own life from experimenting with it, that I don't know, I'm just going to talk about it forever, because I think it can be so helpful for people. So yeah, there's, like you said, there's free sites to get your chart, and you can dive in all over the place to get more information about it, or a reading can be really helpful to start to practice.
If someone was interested in a reading from you, where can they find you? And I can put things in the show notes as well.
Oh yeah. My website and my business is called Lit Up by Design. And you can just go check out what I've got there. I actually have solar return readings on there now after I did yours. I've done a couple.
That was really cool.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it is.
It's like
I still don't even understand what that was, but that was really cool.
Yeah, it's a little bit of madness, but yeah, there's readings on there. I have foundation readings, and then I also have like a small kind of package where we can apply your design to like a specific area of your life, like if you're starting a business, or dating, or something like something like that. We can kind of apply your design to that. So that's a fun one too.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Jen. This was
thank you for having me. Yes. This was super fun. I always love talking with you about this stuff.
Me too. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.